All right, we're back with another Modified Rides podcast. Today I have someone that's got a few kind of high end builds under his belt. Today I have Terry Rose. What's going on, Terry?
Hey man, good to see you. Glad to finally be on the show.
Yeah, so the funny part is we go to schedule this and I had my calendar wrong. So oops.
Yeah,
People do mess up.
yeah. I was like, man, I got shunned already on day one. What's happening? So, but that's all right, man. I know how schedules get and things are busy, and but it's just glad to be here.
I live on my calendar because I never know. Am I detailing? Am I doing photos? Am I traveling? Like I never know where I'm at. So
Absolutely, I'm the same, and you're right. If you accidentally put a calendar event on the wrong day, it throws everything off. So, like I said, I can completely understand it. No problems. We're on here now.
so you live in what, the Nashville area?
Nashville. We're right on the east side of Nashville in Mount Juliet,
Okay.
kind of the suburbs of Nashville.
Nashville's one of those, I guess, up and growing cities right now.
I wish it would stop. Yeah, it's grown a little bit too fast. We're kind of outgrowing our infrastructure, and there's been housing shortages for a while, but things seem to be getting better. It's there's been a lot of improvements into the area on the roads and everything, of widening and making some more. But yeah, we were in some growing pains there for a little while.
Well, Asheville's the same way. I think if they would quit building apartments across from apartments and
Right,
actually do some houses, maybe it would be good.
right. That's for sure. That's definitely for sure.
Yeah, they're building massive apartment complexes right across the street from another massive apartment complex, and it's like, where are these jobs in Asheville? I think Nashville has more job market than we do.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Nashville did a great job. They did a bunch of incentives and brought a bunch of companies in. I mean, you've got Amazon regional headquarters in here. You got Bridgestone here. You got just Oracle's moving here,
Oh, okay.
and so they've got a bunch of good companies, good places to work and everything coming in. But then they got kind of short on the housing and stuff. So they started building just a ton of apartments in downtown Nashville. Well, now there's too many, so it's like it's either feast or famine. And like I said, right now it's not bad, but yeah, I'm not sure what the next few years are going to look like.
So let's go ahead and get into who Terry Rose is and how you got into this crazy automotive world we're in.
Oh wow, yeah, there's a whole lot to that. That's a lot to unpack. So I've always been a car guy, and I think back, even growing up when I was, gosh, I had to have been just a little kid, just watching my dad, fiddling around with our trucks, and he had an '87 square body long bed 4-wheel drive that he ended up putting a Corvette engine in, and that thing, I mean, back in the day, that was a whole
Yeah.
lot of fun. And when I was 13, I bought a '75 C10, and this thing, I mean, it was a death trap. I mean, brakes worked when they wanted to, but it had a warmed over 383, and it was lowered a little bit, and that thing was my pride and joy. Even though now I'd probably be embarrassed of it, but it was a lot of fun, and that's what got me into it. And gosh, I got into car audio after that, the mini trucking, just you name it, just kind of what most of us did at the time. And just as I got into work, and work kind of progressed, and I worked my way up within this company. One of the things I'm proud about, I'm actually been with the same company 28 years right out of college. And so I've kind of progressed my way through the company. And as I have, I've been very fortunate to get into the automotive scene in a bigger way. A lot of people don't know this, but I used to manage the Red Cap apparel brand. And I did that for about 10 years. And that's when Red Cap showed up at SEMA. And we first brought the brand out there back in 2010. And we've exhibited out there for a while. And that kind of got me introduced to a lot more builders, a lot more companies in the scene. And things really kind of just spiraled out of there. So
Well, the Red Cap and Dickies is the heart of the mechanic slash customizer world.
that's right. That's right. And Red Cap is not an overly known brand. I mean, but it's a brand that's been in existence since 1923. So it's over a 100-year brand, and it's a big business. I mean, we're shipping, gosh, 100+ thousand garments a day. I mean, it's big
Oh, wow.
business. It's product that's not only all across the U.S. but across the globe. And yeah, it's a great company. We got great people here, and it's one that I've been like I said, you don't see as many people staying as long with a single company like that.
Yeah.
And we talk about that a lot, and we're proud about that. So,
Well, I know when I was at Pepsi 22 years before doing my own thing, and that was the bulk throughout the years. They'd change uniforms and they'd bring some garbage pants in we had to wear, and I'm like, what are these clown pants? And would bring Red Cap in, and then then they would change, try to get something cheaper, and we all hated it. Then they'd bring Red Cap back in, so I've wore those pretty much my whole life, which is
that's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome.
And I still do now detailing, because reaching over a vehicle, you don't have, metal, rivets or, exposed anything to scratch anything if you lean against paint. So,
well, I love to hear that, because that was a big thing. So I managed the Red Cap brand for 10 years, and I've actually been on some other brands. I'm actually on some protective products that we do as well, and I've been doing this for the last 8. So those products that you're talking about, that all that scratchless product, that was something that my team worked on back then, because we really made a big push into the automotive scene. Even though we were always there, like our basic work shirts and our basic work pants, we made a concerted effort back. I guess we started probably in 2010, 2011, and really started designing products for those car guys. And it was all that scratchless collection where, all the buttons down the front were covered. If you got the button closures on your pants were covered, there was no metal to scratch. And it was all designed for car guys.
Well, I know the abuse I put them through at Pepsi. I mean, climbing in and out of trucks and climbing around in cooler floors. Like, it was, they were definitely better than the junk pants they would bring us on occasion when they did a uniform change. So
yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that. I'll definitely have to let the old team know that, I can definitely, they love hearing good positive feedback from out there.
So after you had that C10 when you were, just barely a teenager, and you said that's kind of what got you hooked, what did you, like, kind of vehicles did you have after that?
Well, so growing up, we didn't have much at all. My parents had a small home construction company. We did a little bit of some small mini farming, if you will. And so my brother and I, we didn't have a whole lot growing up, but his first vehicle was a 72 Nova. Then I had that 75 C10. And if I remember right, I think he got that Nova from a police auction, of all things.
And you were in the Nashville area your whole life.
This was a small town on the west side of Nashville.
You're still in the same area, though.
Yeah, same general area, yes. So kind of always grew up, and so we did. When I went into college, obviously that truck wasn't going to get me there and back and stuff like that. So I ended up I had a 91 Mustang 4-cylinder, and I ended up getting into the car audio scene in a big way. So I started doing all the Phoenix Gold amps, and once I got pretty high up into it, I was doing like all the Image Dynamics, the compression horns under the dash. I mean, that back in the day, and I won. It was like I think it was the Iasca South Central Regional Championship and stuff like that. So I really got into the whole car audio.
I did too.
Mini truck scene and all of that stuff. And I had a 93 Civic, all custom paint job and stuff. And that's when I started showing more on top of it. So I was doing the audio stuff.
And what year was this?
That car was that's probably 96, 97. I was just finished up. Yeah, I graduated college in '97, so I was kind of wrapping up with then. I had that car up in. I went to UT in Knoxville, and I had that car up in Knoxville for a little bit. We had a car club up in the area and stuff, and of course hitting Pigeon Forge and all the other shows back in the day when we had Slamming and Jamming in Crossville and some of those other.
Sure, I used to go to it when it was in Lebanon. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So you were about the same era I was. I started playing with my CRX in 95, 96, and then blew it apart in 97 and shaved it and changed the color and all that mess. So.
We probably saw each other then. There's a good chance, because mine was the 93. It was purple and yellow, had checkerboard flame, or kind of painted down and fading into the paint on the bottom. I mean, it made it into. It was never featured in magazines, but it was. Made it into like show coverage and stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, I had I was one of the first around that had air ride on a Honda like that. So I had the old Hack Shack airbags, not the cylinders, but the actual airbags on it at
Oh
first.
yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, that was probably 96 or so. I had those on,
Okay.
and then switched to air cylinders. I used to hate driving in the gorge from North Carolina to Tennessee to go to Pigeon Forge because air cylinders, you just float from side to side, and the worst driving thing you'd ever be in.
Well, I may have you beat. I had hydraulics on that car for a little bit, and talk about get beat to death in a vehicle. Yeah, that
That was
that,
before
that didn't last
actuators.
very long.
Definitely before actuators. So
Yes, right. That thing would. I mean, it would beat you to death. I mean, you hit a dip in the road, and you just have to wait for it to settle down. So, yeah, like I said, that didn't last very long. Then I remember going back to the new speed coilovers and doing all of that stuff, and got in a little bit more of the, not quite the import scene. I guess it kind of was in between the import scene and the old mini trucking scene with a,
same as mine.
yeah.
A tweed interior,
Oh yeah.
splatter paint, typical mini trucker meets Euro. I was the only one that was like the Honda guy in our mini truck group. So,
Right,
yeah.
right. Yeah. I mean, gosh, man, this is kind of scary. It's like, maybe like a long lost brother there, man.
Well, my mom ain't said nothing, so I don't know.
Yeah.
So where did that take you after you played with that scene?
So I did that for a while, and then just work kind of got in the way. And I actually, with my work, I moved out of the country for a few years. I was I was an engineer and engineering manager, and moved away for a little bit. And then when I ended up moving back, I moved back to Nashville, Tennessee. This Nashville is where the headquarters for the company is based up.
Okay.
And as you can see from my office, I'm actually in the office today.
Where'd you
Um,
move to out of the country?
I was in Mexico.
Okay.
I lived in Mexico, right in the center part, south of Monterrey. It's a city called Torreon. It's a big city, but it's an industrial city. It's not a place that you go for any type of vacation.
It's not a Cancun, is what you're.
No, not at all. Not at all. Did that for a while. So I kind of got out of the car scene for a little bit, and then moved back. I moved quite a bit with my work and ended up meeting my wife. We moved to Texas for a little bit. Got pregnant with our first son, Tyler, who is now about to go off to college this year. And that was in Texas. And so we ended up moving from Texas back to Nashville, changing jobs again, still same company. When Tyler was born, we ended up buying a 68 C10 truck, which, if you remember some of the trucks that we actually ever debuted out at SEMA, that was my first one. So we
Okay.
bought that truck in 2008. And, having young kids, we actually had a second child, my youngest, Colton. We had him in 2000, let's see, late 2008. I'm sorry, early 2008. So we
Your
bought that
wife's gonna be
truck.
mad at you, messing
I
up dates.
know. I know, right? I got to get those dates right. But we bought that truck. Yeah, that's right. Because my son Tyler was about one. Colton was 8 months, due. So we bought that truck as kind of a family project, and life got ahead of us. I had it in the garage, all stripped down to bare metal, parts everywhere. Had a 3-car garage that you couldn't get a car into. And just one day I was like, I'm going to have to do something with this. And we bought it as kind of a family vehicle. I bought it along with my father-in-law. And so we knew we didn't want to sell it, but we wanted to do something with the build. So at that point, when we had moved back, I was managing the Red Cap brand.
Okay.
So going from 2008, 2010. So when I was really doing a lot of the automotive stuff on Red Cap, I was meeting a lot of people, and excuse me, and I met Red Cap. We sponsored Power Nation, which was Horsepower TV,
Yeah.
the trucks guys, and all of those. And I went down to. They were based in south of Nashville. I went
Yeah.
down to the recording studios, and we started talking to them about a new show that was coming on that was called Search and Restore.
Remember that?
And it was Tim Strange. So if you know Tim Strange or not, so he was a car builder out of Illinois, Strange Motion Rod and Custom, and he moved down here to Middle Tennessee to do this series. And they ended up, I think they filmed 3 years, I believe is the case of what they filmed with it. So I got to meet Tim through work, so through the Red Cat brand and through him at Power Nation, and we became close friends. And one day, once his show was over, he and I were just talking, and I was like, "Hey, what about this '68 I got in my garage? I'd like to do some restoration work on it." So he and his wife Carrie, they hooked up the trailer and everything, came over the house. We rolled it out into the driveway, and we're looking over it, and he was like, "Yeah," he was like, "I think we can do this one." And if you know anything about Tim, Tim doesn't take all clients. I mean, he's a little bit picky on who he works with, but
Yeah.
and I was very fortunate. I've got to know him for a while, so he picked that up. Gosh, it was probably in 2012, and we were just the plan was just to do just a restoration on it. We wanted to make it cool and stuff like that. And one day he goes, "What do you think about taking this to SEMA?" And I'm like, "What's that?" I mean, I knew of SEMA, but I didn't know
Yeah.
what it meant to have kind of a SEMA build. And
You just seen it on TV and
I just
magazines.
seen it on, that's right, TV, magazines, and stuff. And we started talking about it, and it was always something more of what I wanted to do. But I just didn't know that's what I wanted to do, I guess, kind of thing. And so we started on that build, and we debuted Domino. That was my '68 C10. We
Okay.
debuted Domino in 2015, and we were in the Flowmaster booth, which is right there, dead center, right outside of where the Ford had their booth right there, and it was incredible. It was an unveiling. We were very fortunate on how this whole thing turned out. It was my truck Domino. Right beside it was a car from Ring Brothers. Right beside that was a car from Rad Rides. And
Wow.
I'm like, you couldn't have asked for a bigger, experience for the first time of having a vehicle out there. And we ended up winning the best truck award for Sony Gran Turismo. And so Tim and I just still kind of joke around that. He was like, because of all the years of going out there and all the different cars that he has brought out there, he was like, you typically don't win awards.
Yeah.
And so the very first one we go out there with, or I go out there with him, and we win an award. So he was like, don't expect this, man. It doesn't happen. So, but I mean, it was an incredible experience, and I'm so grateful for Tim and he helped me learn so much, just not only about just going through on a higher end build like that, but just working with all the different manufacturers, getting, I'm very fortunate now. I've got a network of people that I know that I call friends that are all happen to be working at all these big companies and
Yeah.
stuff. And it's people that I reach out to often, and it could be for anything. I'm checking in on them, seeing how they're doing, seeing if there's anything that I could do to help them in any way, because I'm truly appreciative of what I was able to do on through some of these builds. So that was the first one back in 2015. And then we kept that car for a while, ended up taking it to Saudi Arabia. We did that big deal over there in
I remember that.
2019.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't what it was planned to be, because I think everybody that had made the decision that they were going to take a vehicle over there, that the expectation is that they were going to sell.
Yeah. And for
And
big money.
and right, big money, right? Oil money, right? You had
Yeah.
all that oil money over there. And all of that was true. All of that money was over there. Missed a few key parts. These vehicles would not have been street legal over there. So no one was going to buy it if you couldn't drive it. So that was the first thing. And
What
the
kept
second,
them from being street legal? Was their laws just different than
there was
ours?
laws over there. So what they ended up doing on the last day, or the second to the last day, the prince or whatever declared that these vehicles would be able to be driven on the streets, which at that point it was too late. Like,
Yeah.
the people that came in, if you had interested buyers, they realized they were not going to be street legal, so they left. And so nothing really sold. So then he, like I said, the prince kind of made his declaration and said that these would be street legal. There was drag cars, monster trucks. I mean, there was you had all kinds of vehicles over there, and unfortunately, they just didn't sell. I only knew of about three that sold, or at least on the salon floor. And then they had the auction. And this was the other part that, I guess, until you're into that culture, you just don't realize this. So they had the auction. Um, Auctions don't work in that culture. I mean, it was, they basically, if let's say a prince or somebody from the royal family bid on it, who's going to bid against him? No one. I mean,
True.
it was disrespectful if you were to try to. So the bidding process didn't work over there. So So between the salon not being able to sell anything and then the auction being a big flop,
Did they not research any of this before they set that event up?
one would have thought they would have. And I don't know if it was just a strategical miss or not. I mean, I don't know.
I heard of people with their cars getting damaged and transport coming back
Oh
and
yeah,
all
yeah,
kinds of stuff.
yeah. Because it was. I mean, they picked it up 3 months in advance, and it came back 3 months late. Right. I mean, it was so it was a commitment, and but everybody that sent a car was compensated, and I believe mine had some minor damage on it. They took care of it, and so we got it all fixed and everything, and so they did all of that well. They took care of
Yeah.
that part of it. I'm sure not everybody had the same success story. I mean, ours was good, but they also the event itself. I mean, what they put together, it was like a 5 or 6 day kind of event. Car show, exotics. I mean, they had the Hot Wheels loop thing where they were running. If you were to put an event like that together in the U.S., it'd be one of the greatest car show event type deals ever put together. It was just unfortunate on how the key part of the expectation of everybody thinking they were selling these cars for big money, and none of that happened. But the event itself was pretty amazing. I mean, you had everything. I mean, everything from remote control cars to, like I said, some of the most well known cars ever built. Show cars and stuff that were available to sell. I mean, I mean, Ring Brothers had a few cars over there. I mean, everybody. There was all
Is
types.
the car culture over there that
It's
big?
huge. It
Okay.
is. It's huge. Now it's different, and I think that was another learning. Because we were in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, and they would love to have every 4 wheel drive 82 long bed Chevy truck that you could get restored to original. I mean, though, it's just a different what they feel is they can get any exotic they want. They can get any high end car, and where they're not necessarily looking for street rods or anything of that matter. They just like the old classic US vehicles because you couldn't get them for such a long time. And
Yeah.
so those meant more to them than really any of the exotics that were out there. I saw a line of I think it was like 12 or 15 Bugattis together. Like I'd only seen like two in my whole life, and to see a line of them parked together was pretty amazing.
So you said you shipped that back home. So yours was one of the ones that didn't sell. Did you sell it when you got back?
I did eventually sell it. So ended up, I went to a Cars and Coffee event down in Columbia, Tennessee, and I went down there to meet Tim, it's because Tim's shop, he's in Lewisburg, Tennessee. He's not that far from these guys, and so he invited me down there one day, and I went down and started talking to a gentleman down there. I didn't know him. I mean, super super nice guy, car guy, had a nice car at the event. And after I left, I was talking with Tim. He goes, "Yeah." That guy's got a big car collection, and he goes, "He actually messaged me if you were interested in selling Domino." And I was like, "Well," "I guess I had it up for sale once. I wasn't planning on selling it, but yeah, if he's interested, I'd
Yeah.
sell it to him." And he was like, "Can you bring it back?" And I said, "Dude, I'm almost already home." I was like, "Where's he at?" And so he ended up sending me his address, and I went out to his house, and he had this incredible car collection. He had, I think it was a 70,000 foot garage and everything. And I pulled in there,
Wow.
and it's incredible, incredible collection. So he's actually a big drag race guy now. So Johnson's Hot Rod Group, so they have drag race teams and all of that. But he's got a big car collection, and his dad also has a big car collection here in Middle Tennessee as well. So super nice guys. Still friends with them. Me and Nikki got married shortly after, I guess, we had sold them Domino and stuff like that. But they were just like family. They were just like, anytime you want to drive the vehicle, come on down.
Nice.
It's here for the taking and stuff. And but super nice people.
What did your plan look like as soon as it sold? You're like, all right, I got to do something else, or did you kind of?
Yes, like I guess you're just never really satisfied and stuff. So we sold it. I didn't plan on doing another big build. I ended up using Facebook, just had some contacts and stuff on there, and a guy had posted a picture of a '76 GMC Jimmy, and I looked at it. I mean, the pictures of it looked great, and I was like, man, this thing's pretty nice. And so I called the guy up, and he had a couple of the I'm trying to think what the name of the trucks were. The long bed GMCs. It was like the General. I can't remember the name of it now, but he had a couple of those. He had a couple of these GMC Jimmys, and he was just moving a couple of them. And so my wife and I, we drove down. It was on the north side of Atlanta. Just hooked up the trailer and everything. Went down there, hopeful that this was going to be what we wanted, and got down there. Truck was not as clean as what the pictures made it look like, but it was still a good enough of a, I was like, I looked at it and I was like, I could clean this thing up and just drive it the way it is.
As a photographer, you can hide a lot of stuff. I've shot around shooting mini trucks most of my career. I have shot around a lot of stuff that people never seen in photos.
That's right. That's right. So we brought this thing home, and I did. I got it home, and the first time I took it for a longer drive, and we were actually going to take it up to a buddy of mine's shop to go through it, and we got about halfway there, and I called my wife. I was like, I don't think I'm going to make it. This thing, the transmission started slipping and some other things. So I was like, I'm turning around and coming back. Just sit by the phone in case I need you and stuff. Well, I ended up getting it back home, and yeah, definitely had some mechanical problems and stuff to it. So I parked it into the garage, and kind of like I did with the 68, one weekend I got kind of a little itchy, and I was like, I'm gonna go out there and start taking apart and pulling the interior out, and I'll just put some sound deadener and stuff in there.
Was it stock when you got it?
It was relatively stock, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it was relative. It was an original 2-wheel drive. Wasn't lowered or anything like that. Just had just the white steel wheels and stuff on it. It was orange. It had a tan top to it, and it had been repainted. The guy told me it was restored back in the late 90s. And so as I was taking off all the interior out, super solid floors, everything was really good onto it. And I ended up taking the top off. When I took the top off, if you know of anything about these trucks, where that topper hits the back of the cab, you can form a little rust there.
That's what we were scared with pulling my top off on the 77.
So I'm sitting there, and this truck is bright orange, right? I mean, and I'm sitting there, and I get the top off, and I'm cleaning up. They had some residue in there. It looks like they kind of glued it versus seals and stuff. And I see some silver kind of poking out, and I get one of my little tool picks. I'm picking at it, and it's duct tape, and it is duct tape with Bondo over it. And I'm like, all right. So the more I started picking, next thing I know, I got that whole back of that cab stripped off, and most of it's gone. It's rusted out pretty bad. And which caused me to start looking at the rockers a little bit deeper, started looking at the fenders and stuff a little bit. And he was right. It was restored several years ago, and it was a backyard job, and not a bad one, just not a good one. So,
they didn't have metal back in the 90s. It had to use duct tape.
I found duct tape. I found newspaper wedged into some holes. I found, oh gosh, what else was in there? I mean, there was a little bit of cardboard kind of holding some shape on some stuff. So I ended up.
The only duct tape on mine was on the front seats.
Yeah. Oh, I would have loved that.
It lived its whole life in Vegas, so there was no rust on it really, but a couple little spots. The interior was toast because it sat in the desert its whole life,
Yeah, yeah. Well, I would have loved that. This one had nice seats. The guy had put some new seats and everything. Well, I'd say new, some restored seats and everything. And so, like I said, I mean, looking at it, it looked good. You start digging into it. So I ended up taking the whole front clip off. Parts of the firewall on the sides of the firewall were kind of rusted out. Saw the original color was like an army green, So I ended up, I had some other car builder friends that I've known for a long time. And that's how, so Chris England, who owns Chris England Concepts, he's the painter of that one. And then I knew Josh Wallace. And at the time, Josh had his business was called Pipe Dream Racing.
Okay.
And I called both of those guys up, and I was like, hey, I've got this 76 GMC Jimmy that I think I'm going to do a build on. And I was like, nothing too wild, but I need to get this thing blasted to see what we got.
Famous last words.
Right. That's it. That's it. Exactly.
What year was this?
I didn't message that or mention that earlier. So Domino, that's how Domino started. It was the domino effect. It was supposed to be kind of a small deal. It turned out to be a Magnuson supercharged LS3 on
basic,
on a prototype. Right? Basic stuff. Straightforward. So we started. We brought that up to Portland, Tennessee, and we got it up there. We ended up getting it blasted and seeing how the body looked, and it was rough. I mean, it was like I said, it had good bones to it, but there were some bad spots and everything. But I knew these guys could kind of get it all together. So Chris, at the time, he did all the metal work, all the paint and body and everything on it, and Josh did all the mechanical stuff.
What year was this you were building it?
So this we probably would have started. Gosh, no. So now we're into the pandemic. So we probably started in 20. And yeah, we did start. We started. I brought it up to him. I think it was in December of 2020.
Okay.
And so we brought it up there, and no major plans at the time. Like we were going to make something nice. It was going to be a show vehicle, but nothing over the top. And you just have to know these guys. So Chris and Josh are two of the most genuine guys there are. I mean, these are good guys. These are good people, good family guys, and they happen to also be brother-in-laws. So Chris married Josh's sister. They're both up in Portland, Tennessee, and both working out of relatively small garages. We started talking, and you know how you get the guys together, and the ideas start getting bigger and bigger, and things start snowballing into it. And I remember calling Chris, and I was like, "Hey, I'm thinking about we may try to take this one out to SEMA again." And this was, like I said, late 20, probably early 21. He was like, "Are you in 21?" And I'm like, "No." I was like, I'm not going to do another crunch." We ended up doing a crunch on one. I'll never do that again.
Same. I hate that.
Yeah. I was like, we'll do one I was like, if we can get it ready by 21, great. If it's not ready, we'll do 22. And so we started doing it, and we started coming up with the concepts of it, did some renderings of it. Started picking out some colors on kind of what we thought the rendering would look like, and just coming up with a plan with it. And I told Chris, I mean, once again, both of these guys were relatively unknown in the industry because they're just new, right? I mean, the talent and the capability was all there. They just needed some exposure. And I told Chris, I was like, we build this for SEMA, and I was like, I promise you, we'll get you guys the exposure. And one of the things Chris always tells me, and that's why they've got my second build that we're going through right now, which I'll get to here in a little bit. He's told me, he goes, the one thing, he goes, not everybody delivers, when they make a promise like that. He goes, but you delivered 1,000%. So we got a great appreciation for one another. I mean, their talent level is incredible. I mean, I trust both those guys, whether it be a paint and body or mechanical. I mean, I can call Josh at any time. It's like, hey man, my diesel is doing this. Any idea? He goes, well, yeah, it's this,
Yeah.
this. I mean, he just knows it. I mean, he's damn good. And what I'm proud to say about both of those guys is both of them have moved on to bigger shops. Like Chris he went from a one-man show. Actually, it was probably one and a half. He had a part-time guy with him at the time. He's got a large shop today. He's probably got about 6 projects going on at any given time. He's got 5 or 6. He's got 4 employees. And so his shop's doing great. And then you've got Josh on the mechanical side. Well, Josh ended up bringing in multiple people as well, and got a business partner, and he's got a business now called Reviving Relics. And these guys are doing restoration of older cars. They're doing all of the maintenance and upkeep, or if you're wanting to update older restorations, whatever you need. I mean, these guys are capable, and he's the same thing. He's got 4 or 5 guys working for him now, and he's over here in Lebanon. I put a lot of faith in these guys. We built that 76. We ended up naming it Twisted, and Twisted was the name that we got. We wanted it to be kind of a mix of old school looks, but then all the modern technologies.
Yeah.
We wanted, LS power. We wanted a chassis. We wanted a pretty wild interior to it, which we ended up doing, and I can't wait to talk about that part of it too. We came up with this whole game plan, and we started doing the building side of it. And we started talking. I was like, hey, I got a guy that I want to try for my interior work out of Texas. And I met these guys. Well, the first time I met so this is Mobile Toys out of College Station. So if you know anything about Mobile Toys, I mean, the interiors that these guys are putting out.
I've had Chris on before.
Oh, yeah. Oh, so yeah. So these guys, I mean, the interiors that they're putting out now, I first met them. It was at SEMA years ago, and they were having some of the underseat subwoofer boxes and stuff that they were doing, and I ended up buying one of those for my Duramax, and
I had one of those in my Sierra in 23, and then Chris
Yeah,
is sending door panels for the Blazer.
yeah, they're incredible. I mean,
Oh yeah.
they do such great work. And so I bought that sub box and everything, and then I ended up I was at a Good Guy show in Nashville, and Jesse Greening was over there, and I went over to see Jesse. I've known him for a while, and he had this red Chevelle. It was like a 66, 67 Chevelle, and I looked in and it had this like deep brown leather interior that was just beautiful. And I was like, man, who did this? Who did this interior? And he was like, he's an audio shop out of Texas called Mobile Toys. And I was like, I know those guys. And so I traveled because of my business and stuff. I ended up traveling to Texas quite a bit, and I scheduled an extra day down there. And I called Chris Pate, who's the owner.
Yep.
Didn't know him at the time, and I called him. I was like, "Hey, I'd like to come by and see the shop and stuff. I may have an interior project for you." So we go to his shop, and this was his old building. So he's now in a new building and
Yeah.
everything, but they've greatly expanded out. I went to his old shop and saw some of the cars that he was doing, and he had this old Cadillac in there that they were doing this massive stereo system. He had I think there was a Porsche in there at the time. I think another Chevelle that they had just started on that had a patina finish on it, and he and I got to talking, and same thing. I mean, there was something about Chris that I really liked. I mean, he was the family man that he is,
Yeah, super good dude,
how he runs the
knowledgeable.
business. Yeah, I mean, just a super nice guy. So I was like, I'm working on this K5. I'd like to book you for the interior, and then we'll start coming up with some designs. So I ended up putting a deposit down and booking probably about a year in advance before we even brought it down there to him. And those guys blew away my expectations. And once we finally got to it, so we had Twisted already, paint, body, and everything, probably the first part of 22, and we brought it down to Chris Pate probably in that first quarter of 22, with the plans to be at SEMA in that November. And so he had quite a bit of time to kind of get it together. His installer at the time was David Cruz. David is no longer at Mobile Toys. He ended up moving to Florida, and he's at Avant Garde, and he's been at Avant Garde a couple times. One of the most talented, guys that I've ever met. I mean, his vision of what he's trying to build, and his perfectionism when it comes to kind of getting the interior together. So Chris had told me, he was like, hey, he goes, I'm going to have David do this interior. So I flew David up to Nashville. We went over up to the shop up there, and we're looking at just an empty shell. We've got color sprayed onto it, but the interior, I mean, it's just all bare metal, no top on it and anything. The dash is cut out because I knew I wanted a custom dash. And we just started throwing ideas out there of what we'd like to see into it. And I had just went to an event and I saw a Rivian truck, and the Rivian dash just blew me away. I mean, the way it had this wood grain, it almost looked like the side of a square body, if you will, because of the way it was kind of shaped out there. And I was kind of blown away by it. And I sent a picture of it to David, and he sent it back to me with the picture of that interior overlaid into the interior of the Jimmy. And I was like, man, that's it. That's what I want. I was like, can you do that? He was like, yeah, I think I can do that. And a few months later, I mean, I went back and forth. I mean, he would send me updates. And then about a month before it was finished, he stopped sending me updates. He was just like, everything's going well. He goes, I want you to see this in person. And so my wife and I, we flew down there. We picked out the colors. And if you remember the interior that was in Twisted, it was brown, but it had this deep burgundy kind of tied into it as well. So you see a blue and white K5 with a brown and burgundy interior. And when you first hear that, you're like, no.
It don't matter.
Yeah. And I went down there, and David goes, here's what I want to do. And he threw the swatches out there. He had the perforated leathers, he had the suedes, he had everything out there, and he threw it out there. And he goes, and here's the color I want to contrast it. And it was this deep red. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, there's no way, man. I just can't see it for whatever reason. And I called Chris Pate over. I was like, Chris, I need your honest opinion. I was like, these color combos. And Chris goes, I would do it. And I looked over at my wife and I was like, we're doing it. And
sometimes guys like that have that kind of vision to build that stuff,
right,
have the best ideas for that.
Oh yeah. And like until I saw it, I still don't think I could vision. I mean, it's like the colors to me just didn't flow. And once it was all done, and I remember, so Chris Pate was out of town. We drove in. We got in on a Friday night, and we were meeting David over there to pick up the truck to bring it back to Tennessee to finish it. And David had been crunching on this thing for the last few days, like 20 hours a day. He was beat, he was exhausted. I'm sure he was done with it. And my wife and I, we met him over at the shop. Actually, we were supposed to meet him over like at 8 a.m. and he called. He goes, "I need 2 more hours." I'm like, "All right." So we did. We waited a little bit until he felt better and everything. And we went over there. And it was just the three of us, just my wife and I and David at the shop. It was on a Saturday. So Chris wasn't there, unfortunately, and stuff like that. But David got to walk us through it. And I remember being in the shop. He had it all laid out. When I went in there, I mean, I was just blown away. I mean, I looked through the glass and just looked at it, and I couldn't really even say anything. I think I just turned around and gave a big hug to David on this thing. And once I finally was able to open it up and sit in it, and I mean, it was perfect. I mean, the interior on this thing was just absolutely perfect. And I remember calling Chris and Josh. I'm like, "You guys aren't going to believe this. I mean, like how this thing's going to look." And keep in mind, Josh and Chris had worked on good builds, nice builds, but they haven't done anything like this. So even when we got it back to Chris England's shop, he saw it and he was just like, "Man, I knew you wanted a nice interior." He goes, "I ain't never worked on anything like this. And it was outstanding. And the way the total build came together, um, I mean, we were just blown away by it. So we brought it out. Everything went well with it. We brought it out to SEMA that November. We were in the United Pacific Car
Yeah,
Parts. We were in their booth, and it
I
was
remember
phenomenal.
that.
Yeah, it was. You know, UP Car Parts. They ended up doing, because I remember I saw in 21. I walked past their booth, and John Oro's Prom Queen was in there. So that red first gen K5 that was laid out on the ground, and I
Yeah,
remember seeing that one
that's the
in the
all red
booth.
one, right?
Oh yeah, bright red, and the booth was blue and white, and I knew we were making Twisted blue and white, and I made a post. I still remember this. I made a video. I do all my social media stuff, and I made a post of John Oro's K5, and I was like, "Man, one day I was like, I'd love to have Twisted in the United Car Parts booth." And I remembered I asked them at the show. And of course, it's a year in advance. They're like,
Yeah.
we ain't even thought. We're trying to get through the end of the week. We're not we're not
We
thinking
still
about
got Thanksgiving and Christmas.
right. And I did. I hit those guys up and everything, and I was just like, "Man, I'd love to be in there if we got a chance." And I remember getting the call from John out there, and he was just like, "Yeah." He goes, "We're going to have the K5 in the booth," and he goes, "We're going to do something a little bit different." He goes, "We've only done it one other time." And they ended up coming out to the house and they shot like a big video series, kind of for the debut and for them to do the press release,
I've
which
seen
was
that.
super, super cool.
Yeah.
And the guys were so professional. These are all just car guys at heart. And I mean, they're fanatics over it all. And great people. Once again, I mean, I think you probably heard me say that quite a bit about everybody that I'm kind of around, but I think it's this whole industry. I mean, the
Hmm.
car guys. I mean, just the companies that are associated with the industry. It's just a bunch of good people, and that's, I think it's one of the reasons why we all enjoy it so much. It's like people that we like to hang out with, not the people that we have to hang out with. It's like we want to hang out with.
Yep.
So yeah, it's that was fantastic. And so we ended up having a great show out there. So Chris Pate, Chris England, Josh, David was out there, and it was just an incredible week. I mean, we were slammed all week long, and just a crowd around the vehicle. I mean, I did so many different interviews, just on video, on mic, whatever the case, and just kind of talking about the build. It was all over the internet. I mean, it still seems like I can still find stuff out there that I didn't realize was out there.
I think yours, when it comes to the square body Jimmys and Blazers, I think yours is probably one of the top three, maybe.
Well, I can appreciate that because there's some incredible builds. I mean that are out there. But yeah, I mean, not to be overly biased on it, but I thought just overall the design and how the team pulled it off, Yeah, I definitely think it's up there
Yeah.
with them because I mean, there was things that were I mean, it wasn't overly complicated. I mean, we didn't do any custom body work. We didn't change, wheel openings or flush mounted glass. I mean, that was the whole kind of the whole around being called Twisted. We wanted it to have the original look of a two-wheel drive K5, but we wanted to kind of mix in all of that new technology and everything to it, and the guys did great with it.
So I think the only real new technology I'm adding in mine, I hate to take away from the classic interior on it, but it's like we're going to do a console with a big screen because I plan to drive it and I
Right.
want CarPlay. I don't want my phone stuck up on the windshield.
That's right.
I was like,
Yeah.
I know it's going to kill the classic vibe, but it's like I want this thing to be usable and drivable. Now yours,
Right.
I don't see you hopping in that and driving 10 hours to a show. Like that was a trailer for me, I'm
No.
sure.
But the whole plans of it was to drive it, and that was the full intent. I mean, and it did. It ran great. It had a roadster shop chassis on it. I think it handled well. It rode well. It's tracked well. We had an LS3. With that one was not the Domino had a supercharged LS3. This one just had it was a 525 horse LS3, and we got from Pace Performance, and it's just the reliability of it.
Yeah.
I mean, everything about it was just great. I mean, so that was the intent that my wife and we were going to drive this thing once we got kind of through the show season. And then I say was right because I ended up selling it, which surprised a lot of people, including myself. And I ended up like I said, I love Instagram, and as most of us car guys do, we don't have to read a whole lot. We can just look at pictures and watch car videos, right? I mean, it's a good thing. And one day I got a message on Instagram asking me if Twisted was for sale, and I was like, not really. And he was like, what would it take for you to sell it?
How long after SEMA was this?
This was probably in late February, so about 4 months. He was asking for it, and I learned this a long time ago. It's like when you take a vehicle out to SEMA or any type of the big events, if you're going cross country with it, you're likely going to get offers. If it's a build that really resonates with the crowds and stuff like that, you've got to be prepared if somebody wants to make an offer.
I've sold a couple because of SEMA.
Yeah. And so what I was told is like you always have your not for sale price, and your not for sale price was what would it take for you to sell it and walk away and be like, okay, I did all right on that.
My very first SEMA build was that he come up Friday about an hour before the show was over, test drove it Saturday morning, dropped it off at his house Sunday morning.
Wow!
And it was not for sale. Didn't even get to we finished it in Vegas, so I didn't even get to bring it home done. So
yeah. So well, I lasted a little longer than that, but not much more. But because I had people at SEMA throw out some prices, and then after SEMA, we ended up taking it to. We ended up winning an award at SEMA. We won one of the trim awards from TMI. So this was the first year that they did those TMI awards. And so with that, we got invited to the Barrett-Jackson Cup.
So did you tell Tim when he said, that's not how this works? You're like, well, 2 for 2.
Well, he did come by. Tim is always out there at SEMA. He did come by and he was like, really? Two awards back to back? He goes, don't even start. So I'm already, I got the third one kind of in the works, and I'm already preparing the guys. I'm like, just know you don't always get an award. But we had, I had people inquire about pricing at SEMA, and I threw out my no for sale, my not for sale price, and they're like, that's not a bad price, and walked on, so it worked. And went out to Barrett-Jackson, and actually, same thing, had a guy very interested into it, and he actually wanted it. So this is in late January, and we were going back and forth on it. And he goes, I've got a couple builds in the works right now. He's like, I'm not in any rush. And I'm like, dude, I'm not either. I was like, I'm not trying to sell it. So we kind of left it at that. Well, I ended up getting this message in late February on Instagram, and the guy didn't have many pictures. I looked at his profile, and I'm like, it was like,
was it the guy from Barrett-Jackson that?
No,
okay,
completely different guy. And it was just a random through Instagram. And I'm assuming he has seen this vehicle, seen Twisted at some place. And so I asked him, I was like, did you see it at SEMA? Did you see it at Barrett Jackson? He's like, nope, just online. And I threw out my not for sale price and he goes, I'll take it. And I was like, maybe we should talk. He's just like, give me your wiring information for your bank. He goes,
Yeah.
you'll have the money tomorrow. And I'm like, I was like, let's have a call. So, I've been calling him and he was dead serious. And I was like, no offense. I was like, I don't know you. I've only been communicating with you on social media. I was like, how do I know you're real? Right.
Yep.
And so he ended up sending me some pictures of his car collection.
Yep.
And so I'm looking at it, and this is why I love the car community, right? Because everybody knows everybody's cars and stuff. And I'm looking at it, and it's probably got about 12, 15 cars in there. Well, I knew three of the cars. So I reached out. The first one was Angelo Vespi's. He had this C10. I think it was was it early 70s C10? No, it may have been a 69. Anyway, I saw it sitting up on the rack in there, and I called him. I was like,
That
hey,
black and white one.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was also in Saudi. It went to Saudi Arabia, and that's how I met Angelo. So Angelo couldn't go to Saudi Arabia. He sent that one, and he sent his white Camaro out there. And I told him, I was like, hey, I'll keep an eye on him, and I did. And we've kind of known each other since. He's got the Grand National that just came out and won one of the Rick Ross keys down there. So
seen that.
Yeah, so I'm super excited about that for him. He shared his new nickname. He is Q-Tip, which he will probably die if he hears me saying this online. So that is his new car nickname. He is Q-Tip. But great guy and everything. But I called him and I was like, hey, your old C10, do you know where it's at? He goes, the last I heard it was out in California. He's like, but I don't know who's got it. And so I ended up calling, and I finally got into called a guy. There was a red Roadster C10 or Blazer out there, first gen, and I was connected to the guy on Instagram and stuff, and I messaged him, and I was like, "Hey, there's a guy out there wanting to buy my K5, and it looks like your old K5 is in his garage." He goes, "Oh yeah, that's Jason." He was like, "Let me guess, he wants to buy yours, right?" And I was like, "He does." He goes, "He's going to wire you the money, right?" And I was like, "That's what he said." He goes, "He's good for it." And I was like, okay.
And you never know because there's so many scammers, and
right.
I'm always leery about selling something like that. I've had people buy stuff, never met them in person. They paid the shipper separately, paid. Yes. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I was the same way with this one. And so I ended up I called him and everything. And, and I'm calling all my buddies and stuff. I was like, if I give this guy my wiring information, he can't take anything, right? They're like, no, it's deposit only. So he wires me the money. We orchestrate a guy to come pick it up and everything, and we load it all up. And I'm like, oh, man, I sold the truck. I was like 4 months into it. We took it to Barrett Jackson. We took it to one other show in December. The grand finale down in Louisiana. It's the guys from Battle and Bama put that one on too, and we did that, and that's really all we got to do. No, I take that back. The last show it did was Lone Star Throwdown in February in Conroe, Texas.
Yeah.
And I told the guy in California, I was like, I got to do that one. That's my buddy's. That's Chris Pate. That's his kind of the show that's in his backyard. I was like, I got to be there for him for that one. And so we ended up going out there, won a best SUV out there at Lone Star Throwdown, and then not much longer after that, I mean, we're detailing up the vehicle, getting any of the bugs that may have been in it, to trying to get everything finalized for it, and we get it loaded up, and it's off to California. And
I didn't realize that he had bought yours until I was watching some of his videos showing Kingpin, and in the background, I'm like, oh shit, there's Twisted.
Right. Yeah. So Jason out there and his guys. So I don't want to share too much of his name and everything like that. But Blazing Rods. And if you look at their collection out there, and those guys went big this past year on that build that they did with that wide body Chevelle Doughboy that they brought out to SEMA last year. They built that vehicle in 1 year. I mean, they're amazing at what they're able to do.
That was a lot of 3D printing stuff.
Oh yeah. So if you follow them much, those guys are, I mean, they're working with HP and other ones. I mean, they're doing a lot of things of really advancing this industry. And, and some people have embraced it, some won't. I mean, some of the old school guys, if you're not beating on a piece of sheet metal with with a mallet somewhere, like you're not doing it the right way. But these guys are bringing innovation into the marketplace, and I'm all for it. I think what they're doing it is unique, but it's going to really advance our industry in this customized cars and kind
For
of what we'll
sure.
see over the next few years.
For sure. I
Yeah.
know
But,
he got a steal on Kingpin though, because that was
oh yeah.
they
Yeah.
almost gave it away at that price.
Yeah, that's for sure. Unfortunately, I mean, the gentleman, the previous owner of Kingpin, was due to some changes in his personal life. It was kind of a last minute decision to sell it, and he had been offered twice the amount before and said no.
That's
And
what I heard.
then they ran it across at the auction block because I was out there at Barrett Jackson, and I was like, because it was out there for the Barrett Jackson Cup as well, and there was no plans for it to run across, and then suddenly there was plans to run across, and it brought a good number, but not what it would take to build something like
Yeah,
that.
I know when I was running street trucks, that was one of the ones I'm like, it has to be on the cover. So I was
Oh
like, hit
yeah,
up Noah and them, and I was like, hey, it's like, what, do you have pictures of it? He's like, oh yeah, we got our own studio. I'm like, well, duh, it says it in the name, Classic Art
yeah,
Studios. So they
yeah,
sent pictures and stuff for it. So it's like that has to be covered.
yeah. It's unreal, and those guys are awesome. Noah and Charles and those guys. Like, this is what I love about the industry. I've been able to meet so many of these car builders and stuff, and some of them you think are kind of unapproachable and stuff. I mean, you see the Dave Kendigs and Kev Dog and all those guys. Man, those guys are great. I mean, you can call up any of those guys on any given time. I was texting with Kev Dog and stuff, just last week and stuff, and he was like, "Man, I got to get back with you next week, and we're supposed to try to connect back up." But they're just good people, man, and that's what I really enjoy about it. And what's also fun for me on my side of it is my wife's with me in most places that I go, and hell, they all know her, and they when I call them, they're like, "How's Sarah doing?" And and which means a lot. I mean, these are people that truly care about you and stuff.
Well, it's like same thing. Like I ran into one of my buddies at SEMA was walking through the Resorts World. He comes around the corner. I'm like, hey, what's going on, man? He pushes me to the side, gives my wife a hug first, and then
Yes,
shakes my hand. And I'm like, it's like everybody's that one big family.
that's right. That's it exactly. Yeah,
And
and it's kind of that might be something that Kevin just does because I think he did the same thing to me.
so I know that's when I started this podcast over a year ago. That was one of the things I was like, all right, well, I've been able to meet so many people in the car industry, whether it be mini truck, lifted stuff, hot rods, parts companies, builders, photographers, editors. I'm like, I wanted to bring some of that out that the average enthusiast or showgoer don't see the behind the scenes of what you do or behind the scenes of what I
Right.
do or Jason at Fat Fender Garage, like that kind of stuff. So
Absolutely.
brings that in. So to have people like you on to tell these stories, people's like, all right, well, I didn't realize there was that much involved. And
Oh
most
yeah.
people think you just write a check and you're done with it. And
No, it's all about relationships. I mean, and these are friendships. I mean, I'm telling you, I've got people across the country that I knew if something was to happen, if I was hauling across and I had a problem, I got people I can call and they're going to be there. And the same thing. I mean, if I've got friends that they know if they've got an issue, they can call and I'm going to be there for them too. I think about, I didn't really get into the social media stuff until a few years ago, and I've been fortunate on that. My social media, it does okay. I mean, it's doing pretty well and stuff. But I didn't know anything really about it until I met with Brian Hayes from Brian's Motorsports.
Yeah.
And I think have you done a show with Brian?
Yeah, he was on recently. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's actually taking care of my tires for me for the build this year.
Yeah. I mean, he's a great guy. And I remember the first time I met him out at SEMA, this was probably in either 2013, 2014, something like that. And he was walking through SEMA. You're out there with 100,000 people, and I look over and I see a guy that's got a Tennessee Vols shirt on and stuff. And I'm like, who else would be out here from Tennessee? And I was like, man, you wouldn't happen to be Brian, would you? And he was like, I am. And then he and I've been friends ever since then. I go up to his shop and stuff, and same thing. If I have enough trust and faith in that guy that it doesn't matter what vehicle I have or even my coworkers and stuff. And they're like, hey, I need to have this done. I'm like, I got a guy for you. And because I know he'll take care of you.
I've got a picture of him standing on the Gladiator he did in 19 sideways across the Vegas Strip dancing on
Yes.
the roof. So he's the one that got the only rolling video I have of Cranberry on the Strip was him, hanging out while he was driving the
Is that
Gladiator.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But awesome people, I love them. I mean, they're family to me, just as, just like any of these other guys that I've mentioned before. Yeah. So that's, so I love the social media aspect of it because, I mean, the great part about it is, so people's vehicles and all of that. The bad part about it, you don't always get. I'm the world's worst with names, and I'll have people come up to me at shows and stuff and introduce themselves, and I'm like, "What do you drive again?"
Yeah, what do you drive?
Yes, now I know you. Yeah,
I
um,
always joke that if my wife didn't have Mel come to the house, I'd forget her name.
right, right. It's terrible, right? I'm that same way because we just met. My wife and I were out somewhere, and we ended up meeting a couple, and they had an old truck and everything, and introduced themselves and everything. We walked away, and I was like, "What was that guy's name again?" She goes, "I didn't get it," and I'm like, "All right, it's not just me." So
But the people learning who people are from social media is crazy. I've told the story on here before. My daughter, when she was in college, went down to Florida with some friends, and they were like some bar or restaurant deal. And this guy walks up, it's like, "Hey, you look familiar," and she's like, "Whatever, you're gonna buy me a drink, or what are you doing?" Like she didn't know
right,
anything.
right,
He goes, "No, you look familiar." And she's like, "Whatever, dude." He's like, "No, your dad has Cranberry, right?" And she's like, "I'm 10 hours from home, and this dude finds me in a random bar and knows my dad."
right,
So the whole time, like when she was waiting tables, they'd be like, "You look familiar." She'd be like, "Let me guess, you know my dad."
right. Yeah. No, man, I'm right there with you, man. That's it. That happens all the time.
So after you sold Twisted, is that when you said, "All right, cool, now we got to do something again"?
Well, I said the exact same thing I did when I sold Domino. I was like, we're just going to get a driver. And that same thing, that it did last a little bit longer. So we ended up, I wanted something different. I mean, C10s were everywhere, K5s were everywhere. I love them, but I wanted something a little bit different. And I started looking at Suburbans. I started looking at a mid 60s Suburbans, and I really had my heart set on kind of doing one of those. And there was a thread, I can't remember, I don't remember if it was one of Boris's threads on on Street Machinery where they had people just posting stuff for sale,
Yeah.
and a 59 Suburban showed up, and all it was just one picture of it. And I was like, man, that's different, with the four headlights and everything, because that was only 58 and 59. And I started looking at it, so I messaged the guy, and he happened to be up in East Tennessee. He was outside of Knoxville, and I called him. I was like, "Hey, I'm interested in the build. Can you send me some information?" Well, he sends me some pictures and everything on it, and it was almost like it was bipolar. Like it would. He showed me the underneath video of it, and it's sitting on a Roadster Shop chassis.
Okay.
Then he would show me other parts of it, and I'm like, "Man, that alternator looked like it's hung on there by a wire." I'm like, there's some things that just don't add up on here. And but it looked really good. I mean, it's kind of the same thing as what we did with a K5. It looked like it had good bones to it, and it looked like it could be a good base to it. So I called him and I was like, "Hey, is it drivable and all this?" He goes, "Well, I probably wouldn't drive it 4 hours." He was like, "But you can jump in this thing anytime and drive it." And so my wife and I, we did the same thing. Loaded up the trailer. We drove up to East Tennessee. We're in some backwoods, like we're driving around, and I'm like, I don't know if we can get back out of here. One, I don't know if I can turn the truck back around in here. And we come up to the
Hearing
address.
banjos and stuff.
What's that?
Hearing banjos in the
Yes,
background.
very, very close. And so we pull up to his house, and I can see the front of the Suburban sticking out of like this little one-car garage next to the house. And so I pull over. I mean, I try to get as much as out of the road as I can, and I pull off to the side and everything, and still halfway blocking the road. And I'm looking at it, and it's rougher than I thought. Kind of same thing though we talked about earlier, but overall it was in pretty good shape. I felt like the metal was pretty good. Didn't see any major rust and stuff, and got up underneath it. Sure enough, Roadster Shop chassis. It was a Revo chassis. It was older. I mean, I could tell it was an older restoration.
I
This
didn't know
one,
they made a chassis for that.
well, so this was the Revo chassis, and I believe it was for a truck. And so because you can tell, like, I mean, when we drove it and stuff, the back end was a little bit heavy, and so it would bottom out and everything on it. And so which we've done a lot of work on this thing, and I'll get into the details of kind of what the guys have done. But we picked this thing up. It had a 454 big block into it. It ran good. It was strong, and so we bought it. And so we brought it, bringing it home. I always felt like this is something good that if I wanted to kind of build anything off of it with the chassis and everything, it's already at a great start. So we bring it home, and I drive it multiple times. I drive it to car shows and stuff locally, and I'm all around. It runs good. It rides good. The chassis is doing what it's supposed to do. One day I take my wife to, we just went cruising actually, and she was like, I need to stop by the store real quick. So she goes in, and I'm sitting out in the parking lot, and I'm sitting in there, and then the fan cuts off, and I'm like, why is that? And I knew how he had this thing wired. The fan was up underneath the dash. Well, I stick my hand up underneath there, and hell, I burned myself. And I'm like, what is that? And then next thing I know, smoke is roaring up underneath the hood. And so I jump out real quick. I'm pulling power wires off, trying to figure out what's hot. And what had happened is it's like some of these wires, like once again, you have a Roadster shop chassis, but you have wires going through a drilled hole through the firewall.
Yeah.
It just rubbed through, arced through, melted the wires and stuff. And so I had to do some rewire work there in the Kroger's parking lot and get it back home. But after that, I was like, I don't trust this thing now. I don't know how things are done. So I ended up taking it up to the guys. I was like, let's do another one, right? So we started making some plans for it. Chris asked me early on, and Josh, they're like, another one for SEMA? And I'm like, yeah, why not? So let's go ahead and do another one. So we started, same thing. We started doing all the renderings. And like I said, both guys' shops had expanded greatly. I mean, both of them were in shops probably. Chris's shop is probably 5-6 times the size of his old shop, and Josh is probably the same thing as well. And both had brought in some talent that, whether it be metal work, engine work, wiring, whatever the case may be, paint and body. So we all three met, Chris and Josh and I, and we started talking about the plans and everything for it. And we had some wild plans. So there's a lot more where on Twisted, we didn't do much metal work on it. There's a ton of metal work on this one. So we've got the roof section. We've got Cameo truck taillights on it. We've got stuff done to the back of it that no one's done before. So I'm kind of keeping some of that a little bit quiet right now. I may text you a picture on there so you can see it, but that'll be between you and I. But it's definitely something different that no one else has done. We also took that Roadster shop chassis and we sectioned it and we lowered it down about 3 inches. So there's still no major bridge or anything to it, but it rides about 2.5 to 3 inches lower, and it's got kind of a nice rake and everything to it.
Coilovers on it.
I'm sorry?
Coilovers on it.
Oh, coilovers, yes. And so I had air ride on Twisted. I wanted to go back with coilovers, which is what I had on Domino.
That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, I just like coilovers more so than that. And so we're doing 22 by 12s on the rear. I think it's 20 by 9s on the front. They're kind of pulled in. This thing rides low, and it's got the ability to ride really low. And like this thing is going to be pretty sweet when it's.
That's what we plan with my. Most people do on these, square body blades or stuff. There's a 4.6 or a 5.7, and
right.
I think my frame's about 4.5 inches off the ground front to back. So
yeah,
like no, I want to ride like it's ride height on air ride all the time.
Right. And that's where I was too. And on this one, because when I first bought this Suburban, that was kind of the first thing. I had a bunch of friends say that, like, man, that thing's kind of high, and I was like, what's coilovers? You can lower it down some, but you couldn't really lower it down enough. If I was to build and start all over, like I would have gotten a different chassis. I would have called the guys up from Roadster Shop and started another chassis. But this one, we knew it was older than a 17. Because of the coilovers that were on it. It still had AFCO coilovers on it, and they had stopped using those in 17. So we knew it was an older chassis and everything. I started talking to Josh. He had a suspension guy there at his shop now, and as did Chris. They both have some, like I said, they got some new talent in their shops. And we started looking at it as like, we could kind of Z this chassis and get the ride height that you're wanting and still not worry about having to build a bridge or anything in the rear and really kind of messing up that rear floor. And that's what we did. We ended up raising the rear floor about 2 inches. We ended up, I think, notching the back about 2.5 inches. Then we lowered the front about 3. And we also raised the engine up. Gosh, I think we raised the engine up 2 inches and moved it backwards about an inch and a half. And so we
It's
really
crazy
got
how
this.
all these little measurements that you can tweak something to
That's
completely
right.
change.
Absolutely. And so, I mean, if you open a hood on these 58s and 59s, it looked like the engine was just way down in
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
and which was fine, but that's not what I was looking for. So I wanted it raised up, and while we were raising it up, we're like, let's move it back some, and which was good because we ended up putting a Wizard cooling radiator and everything into it. So this one has it's an LS3, also from Pace Performance Parts, but it's got a Whipple supercharger, and so it's a tall engine as it is, but still, even sitting down in there, it looked like it was being swallowed up by that engine bay. So
Yeah.
by lifting it up and sliding it back some, we put the Wizard cooling radiator into it, which is a great product. I mean, it's really kind of 3-in-1s. It's got your reservoirs, it's got everything kind of all built into that one unit. But it's thick, so it did require us to kind of slide the engine back some without doing too much with that radiator. So they got all of that. We've got some Heart Fab fender wells, and we end up redoing the firewall and everything. And it's the engine bay is just going to be awesome. So I'm super excited about that. But the body work that these guys have done onto it, we've sharpened all the lines onto it. All the gaps are perfect on it. I went up there this weekend, and it's back. So it started off in Josh's shop at Revive and Relics, where they were getting a lot of the metal work and stuff done. It was mainly just a time constraint of where we were at. And Josh, like I said, he's got some talented guys. Justin Gannon's in there. Justin did a lot of the metal work on stuff onto the Suburban. And then now it's up there at Chris's shop up in Portland, and he's just getting it all dialed in. So he's getting all the panels flat, getting all the seams and everything. He's got the door jambs done, primered all the interior and everything like that, getting ready for us to kind of really start hopefully
I saw
laying
where
some
Chris
color
Pate
down.
had seen where Chris Pate come up and 3D scanned everything, which
Oh
that's a
yeah,
complete game changer. We've talked about it on a few episodes. Complete game changer where he
oh
can
yeah.
build your interior without it even being there.
That's right. And so, especially when you something that's this large, I mean, this is a large interior, obviously, on the Suburban. And we knew it was going to be a tight time crunch and stuff like there. And Chris Pate, who does not stop, the dude just works all the time. And I was like, how much time do you need for that interior? He was like, 3 months. I might be able to do it in 2. I'm like, dude, I was like, this thing is like a barn on wheels. Are you sure?
Do you
And
sleep?
yeah, but so we're fortunate this time. Usually he's trying to get 5 builds done for SEMA all at the same time, but this year it's just 2. It's mine and it's his. So he's
Yeah.
only got the 2 builds that we're going to try to take out there. But you're right. He flew up. He put the little reflective dots all over all the panels. Scanned this thing in. He scanned the whole thing in, and the file was so big he ended up having to break it apart and scanning it twice. So he ended up scanning the front half and then the back half, and then tying the 2 files together. But you're right. So they've started, or I believe if they haven't started, they're about to start on the rendering and everything for it. We're using all the Apex leathers and
Same
everything.
thing I've got.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and just great products. Great people. Jen, I mean, she's fantastic.
Oh
Love her
yeah.
to death. Um,
I shot a feature inside their warehouse. Yeah,
yeah,
Bronco, and is doing a burnout through the warehouse. So now it's like leather and tires in the warehouse. So
yeah, yeah. They're
she's
awesome,
only an
man.
hour and a half or so from me.
Right. Yeah, they're not too far. But yeah, they were at Battle in Bama here recently and everything like that. And first thing I see Jen, she was like, "Where's Sarah? Did you bring Sarah?" And Sarah couldn't come down that weekend, but I had my youngest there and everything. So, but yeah, they're all family.
Oh yeah.
They're incredible. So we're getting all that planned through. We got a ton of Holley parts again. So I'm doing the Holley Pro Dash and everything in it. So we have kind of the rough ideas of some of the components. It's got all the vintage air stuff. I did it, steering column and everything. And we've got kind of the concept of what we want to do. Now it's really starting to see once we do the rendering. I'm excited. I kind of told Chris, like, do what you want, bud. I mean, here we go. Let's see what we can kind of come out with this one. And I'm excited to see what he puts together.
So you'll have it done for SEMA this year?
Oh yeah, it'll be out at
What
SEMA
booth
this
are
year.
you going in?
Well, so we were originally going to do the UP Car Parts booth again, And so
Okay.
they actually had a plan. They were going to go with a larger booth and do 4 cars and less product in the booth. Is more about just, they would still have some product based on the cars that were in there. Well, I get this completely because I'm in the same boat. Budgets don't always come together. Sometimes prices are a little bit higher than you think they are. And I got the phone call and they were like, hey, we're not going to be able to do all 4. And the 4 vehicles, it was going to be mine, Ricky Holly's.
Yeah.
Um, I think Ronnie was, and Ronnie may still be having his in there. From he was going to have Ronnie Welch. He was going to have
Yeah.
his vehicle in there. And Ronnie's known those guys forever, and they've done podcasts from the show from there and everything. So I was like, dude, that's okay. But now I have to scramble a little bit. So I've submitted it into the Roadster shop. They did same thing. They're expanding their booth and going to try to have
Yeah.
a few more cars in there. So I've submitted it there, and I've also submitted it into the HRIA booth. And so both of them have kind of a timeline. I'm just kind of waiting and seeing. Makes me a little bit anxious because I like to have something. I'm a planner. I like to have things
Oh yeah.
kind of buttoned down. But this build is going to be so big. Like, I'm not worried about getting it there and having it in a booth or anything like that.
This year is kind of weird. People's changing booth sizes, pulling
Yes,
out. They're,
yes,
we don't know. We won't know till September what we're doing, and it's like
right.
I kind of need to know now. So
That's where I'm at too, because I mean, I've already rented a house. Like, we're we're committed. We're coming, and so we're going to have this vehicle out there one way or the other. But there's a bunch of people I know I could reach out to. I'm
yeah,
just, what I'm interested in. We'll see what the Roadster shop. I think those guys are going to try to make a decision a little sooner than later.
I saw their post trying to find. What do you have on the road shop
Yeah,
chassis you're
yeah.
looking for?
And what I like about having the Suburban, and I don't know if I mentioned the name of it. So this Suburban's name is Wicked.
So
So,
where did Wicked come from?
well, I mentioned Ronnie, right?
Yeah,
So Ronnie, I texted him a picture of it, and I was like, hey, I got my next project, and he goes, that is one wicked wagon.
I can hear him saying that.
Right. And I responded, I was like, did we just become best friends? Did you just name my truck? So, so Wicked stuck. Like, I mean, and, we kind of joked around a little bit about it. Then my wife, she goes, I kind of like that. So it became Wicked. So that is the name of the 59. So it's going to be a lot. I mean, there's so many custom touches to this one. Like I said, there's going to be some things that no one's ever seen on one of these Suburbans, and
Did UP pull Ricky's out of the booth too?
they did.
Ah,
So
I wonder where
I
he's
know.
going now.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I need
When
to
I
get
had him
his.
on, he told me it was going to be in the booth.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we all planned on that, and who knows? I mean, maybe if Ronnie's doesn't, if Ronnie's isn't ready, maybe Ricky's in the back. I don't know. So,
Well, it's
but
like
that's another guy.
Beltec was going to use mine because like, oh yeah, we're doing a booth in the West Hall, doing the booth in Central Hall. We're going to separate truck stuff. We're releasing this new coilover line. We want to do it on yours. And I was going through the map and I was like, that shows a 10 by 10 for Beltec. I'm like, why is it off to the side? And she had emailed me and she said, yeah, she said they decided last minute to they still had to do a booth to keep their seniority because they didn't do one last year,
Gotcha.
but they didn't want to do a full big booth. So they're just, she goes, I guess we're going to set a 10 up and hand out stickers. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And, there's others that I've thought about reaching out to. Borla's been a great partner. They have a fantastic spot there in the show.
Yeah.
But they also have like Ken Dig Cars and a few other things like that in there. So I know that's some prime real estate. But we use so many parts from, key suppliers and everything like that. And so I'm sure we could reach out if we needed to. I'm really just going to kind of wait and see on these first couple. The HRA booth, I was excited about it. I had 2 of my friends in there last year. So Scott Movick had his 32 in there. Then Angelo had that Grand National in there. And what I loved about that is, and what they're trying to do there, they're trying to bring, before historically they'd always be just the big names in there. It was always Ring Brothers, which they deserve to be in there. It was Rad Rides. I mean, it was all the big name hot rod guys. And I think when Mark came in there, Mark Bowler, I think when he came in there, I think he was trying to bring in different types of vehicles and other builders and really try to expand it out to more than just than always seeing kind of the same high end builds. The high end builds are phenomenal, right? That's what got our industry to where it's at. I think showing some of the new builders, the younger builders, showing different types of vehicles and everything to really kind of expand that out. And they did that last year. They brought in, still key builders, obviously Dutch Boys doing the Grand National, but Chris that built the 32 for Scott Movick, same thing. That was his first vehicle he's ever had at SEMA, and they did a fantastic job with it.
It blows my mind that you can have a 7-figure Grand National and it just be that far beyond any other Grand National out there.
Right, right, and like it was a 4-year build. If you knew Angelo, or if you've been paying attention to some of like Dutch Boys and stuff like that, it was out there in the DEI booth in bare metal. And if I remember right, I think it had one fender on it, no hood. It had the kind of just the body to it, but you could see the metal work that Dutch Boys was doing, and it's incredible. I mean, the skill that they have. So to somebody that's really looks into and understands kind of what it takes to build these cars, you start seeing 7 figures, and you're like, I can see how they got there, because it's phenomenal build.
So I'll ask you, like people ask me all the time, is it for sale yet?
Not yet.
I get asked that all the time. Is the Blazer for sale yet? I'm like, no, I'm not. Now, if somebody offers me a stupid amount of money at SEMA, cool, I'll let it go and immediately turn around and hand my builder a deposit for next year. Is what it is.
Right.
But I want to be able to enjoy it. So
that's where I'm at the same way. So the plan with Wicked, same thing. We're building it. It is built to be a driver. So I had the C10 at first. That's a 2-seater at most. I had the K5. The plans were to have that second bench in there, but knew it'd be tight. Well, we didn't even have a second bench.
Yeah, so once again, whoops.
Right. Another whoops. And then we ended up now with a Suburban. So it's for sure 4-seater. So I've got my wife and the 2 boys and stuff. So like it can be for all of us. But yeah, we've had the discussion. It's like, if somebody really wants it and they meet our not for sale price, there's always the risk of it moving on. So
yeah.
We've prepared ourselves for that.
So what is you think project to have it done right before SEMA? Are you going to try to give yourself some cushion?
Ideally, we get it done at the first part of October.
Okay.
And it's going to be tight though, because we've got it. If we can we'll get it in color here in early July, start getting everything, get the chassis all blown apart, get the engine all painted and everything all back together. We should give a running driving shell down to Chris Pate for August and September for the interior, and have kind of October as kind of our buffer period.
Yeah. We're shooting for September-ish for mine, so we can put some miles on it. So, because after SEMA, it goes to Dino's, and then after Dino's, it comes back to my side of the country. So, I want my builder to be able to put some miles on it.
I'm doing the same. So, we'll take it down to Dino's as well afterwards. And what I love about Chris and Josh as well is, Josh, because of his mechanical excellence on things, he's like, no, he was like, we don't build nothing that you can't just jump in and drive across country. He was like, so it's going to be a driver. And so he'll have it ready. I've got all the faith in the world in those guys are getting everything.
Yeah. Well, tell people how they find you online to keep up with this build and whatever your next 12 are going to be.
I know, right? Well, so mainly on Instagram. So I do have t.rose_wicked, and not only am I showing just kind of progress of my own personal stuff like that, but I do go to a lot of shows. I go out to support my friends and stuff that are car owners. I go out and support, my friends that are builders.
Yeah.
And so I do go to a lot of events and I show a lot of coverage. I'm definitely not a professional by any means, but I enjoy it. It's something that I truly enjoy. I love telling people's story. I love hearing people's story. And if I can share stuff on people's builds, and if it gets them any more attention or if it gets them any other opportunities, great for them. That's really what I'm trying to do.
I was seeing your stuff from Bama and I was like, man, I didn't do any of this. Like I carried my Osmo in my pocket, didn't even pull it out. Like I'm just like, I get there and I get talking and looking and, like networking. And I'm like, crap, it's dinner time. I didn't even do nothing.
Right. I didn't do as much as I should have, for the same thing. It's like, I spent all the time in conversation, and I was over there with Pate. They had all those killer rods that their whole display. And So I'm over there with him, and I'm like, dude, I need to let him do some work. He needs to go sell something. So then I'd run over and try to get a few videos, and then come out and hang out with those guys. But Craig does such an incredible job with that show. It's such a fun event in so many different ways, and I'm glad to see the success that they're having with that show
Yeah,
too.
for sure. Well, we'll have to keep an eye on the progress of Wicked to see how it comes out, and see how it wows the people. If it's anything close to what Twisted was, it's going to be insane. So.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I mean, we're excited about it right now. Yeah, it's definitely gonna turn some heads. That's for sure.
That's good. Well, I appreciate you coming on. I'm sure I'll run into you here soon at another show, and I'll be back out for a Triple Crown. So I'm sure.
Oh yeah,
that's in your backyard. So I'm sure
absolutely.
We'll see you there.
Yeah, I will definitely be there. That's for sure.
All right. Well, I appreciate it, man.
All right. Well, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to come here and spend some time with you.